Hey everybody, Chris here. Just a quick note to let you guys know that this episode was recorded back in December of 2016, right around Christmas, and it's a board meeting with all four of us, with Paul and Blake and Nate and myself. And at the time, we only had a setup for 2 microphones, so the sound isn't what I normally expect out of this podcast. And I had actually considered not putting it out because it was going to take so much editing to put it together and to get it to sound anywhere close to where I wanted it. But on a poll on our Facebook community page, everyone demanded that we put out this board meeting. So here you guys go. And thanks to your patronage, we have since upgraded to a setup that will accept 4 and up to 6 mics. Actually the same setup that Tim Ferriss uses. And that happens because you guys support the podcast. So thank you very much and enjoy the episode.
Maybe don't know.
This time, power. This time to build power. This time to build power. This time to build power.
What's up, everybody? I am your host, Chris Hampton.
I'm Blake Cash.
And I'm Paul Corsaro.
And I'm Nathan Drolet.
And the whole crew is here again. This is like an actual board meeting because we're all here. Board meeting in session. What are we going to talk about? Top 3. How are we going to word this? We're doing top 2, actually. You're not getting me again.
Boom.
Yeah.
Plateau breakers.
Top 2 plateau breakers. I like that. I had busters written down, but that sounds way 1980s hip hop. So we're going to go with breakers. I like that. Top 2 plateau breakers. So we've all been there. We've all been stuck. How do you get out of that? I think that's one of the big quandaries in climbing training. So we're going to tell you how. And these are the only 8 ways to do it. There are no other ways. Period. So we started with Blake last time. Let's start with Paul.
All right, so the first one I've found some success with is I was going to call it a moderate weakness period, but I decided to call it a successful weakness period because
I like that.
A little bit more positive spin to it. And, if you're in a plateau, you're probably feeling pretty negative as it is. So
yeah,
let's, put a positive mindset on things because honestly, that's important too. But anyway, so what I like to do is I'll go out and climb significantly below my level. And for the most part, recently, majority of boulder, so I'll just use V grade for simplicity's sake. But so saying, I'm struggling on whatever I'm working on, and I'll go way below my level on a style of climbing that I am not good at. So anything less than vertical, technical, not a lot of holds I can grab or holds I can squeeze because I like to compression climb. I'll go out and session a bunch of days out, 3, 4, even 5 number grades below my limit. And, just you learn subtleties of movement that you can take forward into some of your harder pursuits. And also, it kind of helps remind you that climbing's fun. We do this because it's fun. We don't do this because we hate ourselves. We don't do this because we want to have a bad day at the end of the day because we didn't send our project. Like, we're outside in a beautiful area. We're with friends. The weather's nice. I mean, climbing's awesome, and it's good to be reminded of that from time to time and learn totally subtle lessons you can take forward. So, Successful weakness period.
Yeah, I think it's funny, too, that, it might be our weakness, and we all kind of equate that with I'm not going to have a good time because it's what I'm bad at. But definitely some of the most fun sessions I've ever had are just playing on these low-rated, odd boulders of, some weird thing that I'm not very good at. It's so much fun.
A friend of mine has her favorite 0 star day. Well, she'll go out and
0 Star Sunday.
Yeah, you've heard of it.
I celebrate this every week.
Yeah. Was that that mantle at LRC you had us do that one day?
Is this Ann? Are we talking about Ann?
No, it's Margaret Schneider.
Margaret does it.
She and and Anna would go out and do that.
Cool.
And they'd go out and
I thought maybe we were talking about Ann Holmes because she makes up crazy little mantles that are super fun all over the boulder field.
I have not yet been able to climb with Ann outside. We climb the same gym, TBA,
Yeah.
but I haven't been able to climb with her outside yet. I've seen her in passing, but we haven't spent time on the same problem and such yet.
Cool.
But yeah, so like you said, going out climbing.
Yeah, it's so much fun. It's
Climbing's
fun just
fun.
throwing yourself around on something silly.
Yeah.
You know,
Sucking is fun.
it really is. Oddly,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have thought so.
I mean, also when it comes down to it, it's more of all the boulders, which is, I mean, that's the goal in the end. Is
Except for when they're roof crack boulders, right?
to do all the boulders. Those aren't boulders. Veda Vu is not boulders.
It was fun. Don't deny it.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, kind of on that, sort of on a similar scheme of that. Like, when my first season guiding in Waco Tanks, me and a bunch of buddies, we decided, we were on the all the boulders plan, the ATB plan. So every day we had to climb 5 new boulders, which means like a lot of times, be new V0s, 1s, 2s, 3s, whatever. But like, man, we were all in Waco for like almost 3 months. Like, so by the end,
A lot of new boulders.
we had done a ton. Like, and we were all guides, so we were in the backcountry. I mean, I think I was in the backcountry every day of January that year because I was either guiding or climbing or both.
But let me ask you this: if you only log V7 and up on your 8A, then what could possibly convince you to climb V1?
All the boulders. That's the only answer I can give you.
Yeah, that's a good answer.
But yeah, no, and it's fun too because we started you realize there's a lot of great like 1 and 2 star climbs and even 0 star climbs. You're like, no one ever did this, but it's actually like kind of cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it was so fun because every day was kind of a victory, and eventually you were just like, some of your 5 boulders were like kind of harder. They were really cool. You're like, oh, that was really fun. Like I never would have done that otherwise. And yeah, when you walk away from it, it's like even like it's funny that season for me, I was climbing with a guy who was a bit stronger than me, and I just love rallying with a strong crew. Like to me, that's one of the funnest things ever.
Yeah.
So he would send something, I'd give it a few more tries and be like, oh, let's just move on to like whatever else. So I like sent almost nothing that season minus like the ATB boulders.
Right.
But that was like, as far as growth goes, like that was one of my biggest seasons, like just from climbing with someone better than me. And yeah, just like doing what Paul said, just logging a ton of mileage on everything.
Yeah, and you're getting a bunch of momentum you can carry over.
Yeah.
From that. And even in a single day, I think that momentum is important. If you go out and just try some things you maybe normally wouldn't try just to build some momentum, then it can carry over into the rest of your day or the rest of your season or the rest of your climbing career. Who knows, if you do it enough to keep that momentum rolling.
Do any of y'all have methods or maybe superstitions that you use to kind of build momentum for the day? I do.
It's funny that you asked that because just the other day, like I'd been struggling on Golden Harvest for a couple of days, not really feeling like I was making any progress on the one really hard move. Mm-hmm. And I had been walking past the Big Bad Boulder, which is one of my favorite boulders on Earth. I just think the Big Bad Boulder itself, the problem, the V6 is
it's so good.
It's good.
so good.
It's
V6
good.
doesn't get much better.
I've always loved that boulder, but I
heard
hadn't
it was
stopped.
V3 now.
That's probably right.
It's whatever. It's V. What is that? All the ATB. Yeah, that's a tough one to come up with.
Coolest finish hold
VATB.
ever.
Oh man, it's so good. But I stopped and I climbed it like 5 times just for the fun of it. So good. Just tried to make it better. Treated it like a perfect repeat problem in one of our plans, Mm-hmm. And then when I went down to Golden Harvest, I was climbing so much better. My warm-ups had started kind of so I was feeling like, oh God, today's going to suck. By the time I left the Big Bad Boulder, I felt so good, and it was the best session I had on Golden Harvest. So when I go back tomorrow, I'm definitely doing Big Bad about 5 times before I go down to Golden Harvest.
I mean, it comes down to the fact, like, climbing's fun. We do this because we enjoy it. Like,
yeah,
we're not masochists here.
Yeah.
It's a fun sport.
Yep. And like Nate said, superstitions, if once I found that it worked, I'm going to do it again.
Yeah.
I have to top out the first boulder I climb on every day.
Really?
Yeah, I have to get to the top.
That's funny. I don't top out for like the first hour probably.
Heretic. Yeah, like you have to get on top of a boulder. Like that's how your
And
day
I purposely
starts.
don't start on the start holds for a lot of my warm-ups.
Oh no, well it
so
depends.
that it doesn't even count as a
depends.
problem.
If you've already done the boulder once, then you all's on. Trees are on. You can stem to other
You
boulders.
can walk around the back.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
it's whatever.
You can't move backwards.
You have to be
God
on
forbid.
top of a boulder.
You just throw your chalk ball at it and call it done.
Yeah. But
Any superstitions for you? Anything you do that you makes your day go better?
it can be sport climbing too.
Oh, I know. If the opportunity allows, I generally always like to try and do one new warm-up pitch, like something new always in my day.
I think that's a good way to go.
Yeah,
It is.
that's like it always.
It's tough when your home area is little.
Yeah,
but-
it is. But like oftentimes, if I can, if it's there and possible, I always try and do a new pitch, even if it's a 0-star route. If I can do new moves in a day, generally, it sets me off funny good.
Cool.
Even if it takes like 2 goes to do it, just to like do a new route every day.
Do you do the same thing with strength training, Paul? Like if you're hitting a plateau and you're strength training, do you kind of step it back down and just run through the same like
So what I'll
good feeling moderate stuff?
So what I'll usually do is I'll set a timer and go through the same kind of progression I'd do if I was, working for a heavier lift or something like that. But I'll try and just do as many good reps and however many times with a way more moderate weight
Yep.
and just move and just feel good moving and do that. So yeah, in a way I do.
Cool.
Which probably why that transferred over to how I approach a climbing plateau because
Yeah.
mindset's very similar.
Yeah. Cool. Nate, I believe you're next.
All right. My first one is bring it back to the basics. So, and for me, this specifically goes towards movement. So if I feel like I'm stagnating, then I'll focus on something I think I'm bad at, or just something that, I just look at like, okay, what is the foundation of what I'm trying to get better at? Like this could be sometimes breathing. Mostly it's something along the lines of like, I'm going to try and like I want to get better at backstepping or twisting. Like for me, backstepping's been a big one for years. And so I might even pull back like with my strength training, like all my pulling motions for the next like month might just be 1 arm rows or 2 arm rows or different rowing variations and really try and focus on the form and really trying to dial that in. And when I climb, I'm not just trying to like do hard boulders. I'm trying to use that exact same perfect
Right.
form.
And I've noticed you do that. Like I've seen you go through those motions, and we've talked about it a fair amount on our workshop tour this summer, that you were really focused on 1 arm rows and really working on the form of it, which I thought was pretty cool because I know some guys who have backstepping issues. And, it's funny that you bring that up because the guy I'm thinking about, and you know who you are, doing 1 arm rows was doing them super, super sloppy. And as soon as I was like, do them this way, he was like, oh, that's really hard.
Can't I just twist?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I can do it a lot easier when I twist.
Yeah, thinking about the form of the really basic movement. I think that's really important.
Yeah, and for anyone who wants to know, like there's a great video that Eric Cressy put out called 8 Ways to Screw Up a Row. And he does a phenomenal job of explaining roughly 8 different ways that you can mess up a row. And he breaks down the form tremendously. And he uses a cable tower to do it, but you can use it for gymnastics rings, cable tower. I mean, shoot, you can even use it like on a vert wall and just practice rowing.
Right.
But for me, it's been really great. So, I practice.
Which I've seen you do.
Yeah, no, I do it as part of my warm-up now. Like I'll go to a vert wall and I just practice rowing on a hold.
Yeah, and the only reason I point that out is because you've climbed V12, but you're on a vert wall, just on a jug doing rows.
Yeah, sometimes
And-
clip to an auto belay.
Yeah, and I think... Do you do it at the top of the auto belay or at the bottom?
I hope so.
It depends on how much resistance I need.
But no, I think that's really important that you're at that level still focusing on these basics. You're not just talking about it, you're doing these things.
Yeah, and I mean so with these kind of things, you can keep breaking down as much as you want to the point to where, and then I'll work on like anti-rotation strength. So for instance, pal-off presses are really good. Bird dogs are really nice, stuff like that. So that when you are rowing, your midsection isn't like breaking, and you're not losing energy in that way. So try and build everything from the ground up, so that when I do when I do get back to climbing hard, like this whole pattern that like I've always been weak at is now one of my strengths.
Totally.
And it's been kind of cool, actually. Like I've had this really neat period recently to where I've never looked at backstepping as like, that's not the option. If I'm at a crux, I square up and I knuckle down and I go for it. Like that's just what it is. Like I'm a very like competent squared up climber. And so it's been neat, like recently climbing with other people who do backstep. They'll be like, oh, have you tried that? And I'm like, no, like that's fucked. Like that'll never happen. And then I try it and then I'll do it and it actually feels easier than the squared up method. But it's crazy. Like I can't visualize myself doing it yet.
Right. You don't believe that's the easy method.
Exactly. Like I don't have enough experience with backstepping yet, but I've managed to shore up that weakness so much that like, it's like this hidden thing. I'm like, oh, that's stupid. I'll never try it. But when I try it, I'm like, oh, this is actually like a feasible thing. So it's been fun. Like I'm getting to learn this new skill from kind of a backwards direction. So yeah, like returning to the basics, really like diving deep, getting the absolute foundation built up, and then restarting from there.
Yeah, I think that's a super smart way to do it.
Thank you.
Yeah. You're pretty smart, Nate.
Chris, I believe it's your turn.
What I do, you won't necessarily like. You'll like part of it. I switch disciplines. If I feel like I'm stagnating at sport climbing, I'll switch to cracks for a little while. And if I'm stagnating at bouldering, I'll switch to sport climbing for a little while or whatever. And really, you know, it doesn't necessarily break through the plateau physically, but it just gets my mind past it and I'm focused on other things. And then when I come back, I'm refreshed and it's easier for me to feel like I'm starting over instead of starting right in front of a wall. You know, and I love all the disciplines, so I can rekindle some psych if I go and play on some cracks or play on some boulders or whatever the case may be.
How do you feel like this benefits you as far as momentum goes? Like once you, let's say for instance, like now you've been bouldering for a while. So let's say once you stagnate with bouldering, like what would be your next step from here?
If I'm stagnated with bouldering,
yeah.
Are you saying that that's where I'm at right now?
No, I'm saying like, okay, you've just like sent 7
because it might be, you never know. No, I think that my next step, if I feel like I'm stagnated, is just to make some new goals. And generally, if I'm coming off of a plateau of some sort and I'm just kind of diving back into another discipline, I'll make some sort of intermediate goals. You know, sort of similar to what Paul was talking about, where you're just looking for successes. And I'm really just looking to remember how to move in this new terrain and on this, you know, especially crack climbing, I think is a really great one because I haven't been focused on it for a long time. So it's really fun for me to revisit. And every time I go revisit it, it feels adventurous and it feels fun and it reminds me why I love climbing. And
that's weird because every time I revisit it, I feel like I've never rock climbed before and I suck at it.
Oh man, I have such good memories of you on that roof crack down in Dayton.
Yeah, it was horrific.
And Nate on that roof crack in Beatavoo. Blake, we need to go roof crack climbing.
Never.
But yeah, it just gets me stoked again. So I don't know that it momentum wise, I think that's where it is. It's in my attitude, it's in my psyche. It's
more in the motivation rather
it's
than
in the motivation. Yeah.
the actual success itself.
Yeah. I'm having successes on something that really, when I look at the big picture, is probably a low number for me. You know, when I look at trad climbing, my goals might be in the 512 range, and I've climbed harder than that in the past, but it feels so fresh again that those lower goals that I know I can hit provide me with some motivation and some momentum. So, yeah, switch it up. That's my advice.
All right. Well, I think it's about time for us to take a break.
Well, I think we got Blake Cash
No, I
still.
don't know, dude.
Yeah.
What's up, dude?
You're early on this. No, see, your
I haven't
phone
talked yet.
in that weird configuration
Your askew phone
was
threw you
supposed
off.
to remind you,
I thought Blake started.
and he blew it.
No,
So
I didn't.
Blake Cash, which
Yeah.
coincidentally, have you ever thought about being a rapper? Because it's a cool name to be
I
a
haven't.
That's a
rapper.
good rap name.
Blake
Some
Cash
chick told me
Money.
today I had a good country name.
Oh
Really?
shit!
So, yeah.
It's just
What's your
musician.
middle name?
Blake.
Blake Cash.
My first name's Daniel. Daniel Blake. Yeah.
Blake Cash is going to be really
First name's
good.
not Daniel anymore.
Blake.
All right.
All right. Well, I'll just take this from here.
Now that we've set you up.
Good choice.
Thanks for the intro. So mine is kind of in a similar vein as what Chris and Paul have talked about, which is backing off a bit. Historically, I have had a tendency to kind of go harder and kind of run headfirst into a brick wall
Yeah,
when
man.
I feel like I'm struggling and not having any success. And I've learned that doesn't work. So for me, I think experiencing success is really important, and like remembering, because I'm predominantly a sport climber, that like I actually can still clip chains.
Yeah.
Like that's like really important for me to do, because, you know,
If it's clipping chains you're interested in, you should just go to the mother load because the second bolt is a chain generally.
very true. But yeah, I think knowing, and you know, all of these things we're talking about here, I think have a lot to do with a really important thing, which is being self-aware and just kind of knowing like when it's time to go hard and when it's time to back off. And I think generally a plateau for me comes from doing too much and spending too much time doing one thing. And so I think resting more and climbing on easier terrain and just having success is really huge for my mental state.
And it's hard to do.
It's really hard to do.
Like
I mean,
you hit that point where you're like, I'm almost there, but
Yeah.
I'm not quite there. I got to do more. And people just tank their seasons that way.
yeah. And I
see it all the time.
I still struggle with it. I still have to like be really conscious of what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, because, you know, I find myself doing it like, you know, 2 weeks ago, you know, finding
Yep.
myself like going harder and harder over the course of a week and be like, no, you need to actually like rest today.
That's funny. I asked Annalisa 2 weeks ago. I was like, "Has Blake rested this week?"
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know. I have a hard time like not doing stuff, so I tend to like do too much, and yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really easy mistake to make.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good point because we all tend to go that direction. You know, I definitely did early on. Now I think I go the other way. I rest too much maybe. But yeah, I think
Yeah.
going hard is the obvious answer, and
Always.
it's not the right answer.
No, and like, you know, this week I've been resting more, and I've had like 2 of the best climbing days of my season so far.
Yeah.
You know, so I've like backed off a little bit, and I've been climbing on hard stuff still, but I've not been doing as much as I normally would.
Yep.
And I think as a result, I'm climbing better.
I blew a season at the Red going too hard. I was trying a route and I wouldn't do it. So the next day, my goal was to go to the mud load, do 10 pitches of the mud load, and then I try it the next day.
Yeah, because
Right,
that's
right.
the
And I did
obvious
it
answer.
over and
you know?
over and over
Yeah,
again.
Yeah.
I wasted
Yeah.
a season that way.
Because you
And, like,
clearly need more fitness. You know what I mean?
right?
Like,
Yeah,
that's-
I'll just do some pitches at the load,
Yeah.
get more fitness,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it'll go. And I wasted
Yeah.
months.
And you see
of climbing.
Yeah, you see people in the gym, you know, and they're, you know, not climbing well their routes, so they come into the gym after their day of climbing, and you know they're like bouldering for an hour, and then they're on the campus board, and then they're burning out doing whatever they're doing.
Yeah, and it almost looks like punishment.
Yeah,
You know, that's how
Yeah.
it feels. Like
Yeah.
I'm not performing up to my expectations. I need to punish myself by doing
Yeah.
this even harder. And when in reality, what you need to do is say, you know, I got myself here. So congratulate yourself a little bit take a little bit of rest, relax a little, and let the training work. You've worked this hard for a reason. There's no reason to ruin it now.
Yeah, that's and it's
tough to remember that.
It's so hard to put into practice. It's so easy to like talk about it and say that this is what we should do, but I think like it works. I've seen it work, but yeah,
you're gonna have the same conversation with yourself the next time.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I have it monthly.
And I also think it's important though to realize that like you got to realize this after a lot of trying hard and pushing hard, because you could go the other way and be like, oh, I had a couple rough days, I need to back off. Like,
I know people like that too.
You got to understand that balance point, but I mean, it's there, like definitely, like you said, running into a wall, but
it's easy to overcorrect course.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
See, you just sit there all quiet and you think of the good shit to say.
You're welcome.
Okay.
I think it's time for us to take a break.
It is. Good job, Nate. I'll just edit that into here. Thank you. All right. Take a break. Hey everybody, Chris here. I'll try to keep this short and sweet. Since this thing became officially official, I've basically been obsessed. I've got dozens of episodes waiting to go out, and I'm constantly recording new conversations. I want to continue putting this level of energy into it, and you all can help. We've created a page at patreon.com/powercompanypodcast where you can help support what we're building. In return, even for as little as $1 per month, you'll get access to the brand new We Scream Like Eagles podcast, which includes tips from our guests, extra conversations about hot topics, and Q&As with your questions posed to our guests. If you think it's worth more than $1 a month, we've got other rewards available on top of the bonus episodes like stickers, ebooks, t-shirts, and training plans. So if you've been considering pitching in, now's the time. That's patreon.com/powercompanypodcast. Thanks a ton, and back to the show. All right, we have returned officially, and Paul Corsaro, you're up to bat.
Sweet. So we're talking about, what to do, how to get out of stagnation. And you, Chris, mentioned earlier about, switch disciplines. And I'll take that a little further. I like to quit.
Quit?
Yep. Just kidding, just a little bit. But I also, I do think it's important to have balance in your life.
Oh, yeah, man.
You've seen the perpetual climber who climbs all the time and he's just angry.
Yeah.
But, sometimes it's good to have balance, take a step away. Find another hobby. Find another sport.
There are other sports?
There are.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. What do you know? But, and I like to make sure it's something active. Go out, run. I know a lot of people around here like to mountain bike. This summer in Chattanooga, a lot of people like to go out and fish. So you're still enjoying the outdoors.
Yeah.
You're getting a lot of the good parts of climbing. I like to do something physically active so I stay in shape. But it takes the mental stress away of going out, getting after your project. I'm going to warm up. Where are you going today? What are you getting on, dude? Like, it's good to just go out and try something new. You have lower expectations. There's a rule of diminishing returns. The longer you've done something, the more skilled you get at it. The advancements you make are smaller and smaller. Still just as significant, but when you think about it quantity-wise, the margins get smaller. So it's good to go out, and I guess it kind of goes along with my other point of just, experiencing successes.
Yeah.
But try something new, and you might come across a concept that you can apply when you switch back to climbing.
Yeah, and I think that's important. Your life is huge in how you're performing. Yeah. And if you don't have other hobbies you can fall back on, or, even something as simple as reading or sleeping, for God's sake. Maybe sleeping could be your hobby.
That's my favorite hobby.
So good at napping.
Annalisa is really good at sleeping, and I suck at it.
I've witnessed this.
Yeah.
10
It's amazing.
Not present.
But yeah, anything that can be that balance in your life. Yeah. I think that's huge.
And again, I want to make the point that, don't quit right away. I know I said quit earlier. That was a joke. I'll clarify that. But this is after a point of, it's when you know you're not stoked to wake up to go rock climbing. It's when you're putting off
Stop
the days,
forcing
or
it.
you're finding excuses to not get out or something like that. Then it's time to take a break, play around with some other stuff, and when you come back, the psych's going to be much higher.
Yep.
And honestly, if you're staying active and, balancing out a lot of the movement patterns coming from a strength coach perspective, you may find you haven't lost a whole lot.
Yeah,
And
totally.
if you have, you're balanced out, and you may come back stronger much quicker than if you just kept kind of, as Blake said earlier, running into a brick wall over and over again.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and I think the climbing only lifestyle can only really be sustained for short periods of time.
it's hard.
I've seen a
is
lot of people, kind of go down that path where they're only rock climbing and their self-worth is only based on their performance. And those people crash and burn pretty quickly.
I'm glad I don't do that because my self-worth would be pretty much zero.
Well, yeah, I know. And so, I mean, for me, it's nice to feel like I'm successful in other parts of my life too.
Yeah.
So that when climbing doesn't go so well, I'm like, well, I'm good at all these other things and I have value in these other parts of my life, because you see the dirtbag rock climber, who actually winds up not really rock climbing that much. They just travels
Go out and do a couple
constantly.
pitches or a couple
Yeah.
boulders. And
The whole Miguel's crew
Yeah.
when you were down
Yeah,
there, Paul.
exactly.
Like a lot of those guys,
and they were angry,
they
man.
were pissed off
Yeah.
all the time. They
Yeah.
would go to the crag just to sulk,
Yep.
just to be mad.
I mean, I think honestly, it's easy just for anyone to sort of tie their self-worth into their climbing. And it's unfortunate, but it happens. I mean, hell, I train, during the day I train people, I also climb all the time. Climbing's a lot of my life.
big
It's a
part of it.
huge
Yeah,
bulk
it's a
of it.
huge part.
I have a lot of other things going on, but man, it's it is definitely tough for me when I am climbing poorly. Cause I'm well, I'm a coach. I should be helping other people if I can't climb well myself. And it could be that I just had a bad night of sleep. It could be one of these tiny little things, but it's hard not to let that thing kind of seep in. You look at a lot of people, their vacation time that they take from work, it is for climbing trips. So much of what they do in life, where they picked out their house that they live in, it's close to the climbing gym or it's close to climbing or something like that. I think it is tough. When you have so much of your life revolved around this awesome, amazing hobby, not to say well, if I'm doing all this for it, if I'm not performing, what am I even doing? And I think that's a tough thing for anyone to go through.
And I don't want to mislead anyone. I care a lot. And I get really angry and I get really frustrated when I'm not performing in the way I think I should. But I think that it is easier for me to deal with that when I also have other things going on in my life, even if it's just training people, something else that I care about, success with other people, I think that's that helps me along the way, as opposed to living out of my truck somewhere and just sleeping at the crag and waking up and walking to the crag and then only trying a route and failing and being well, this is the only thing I have going for me.
Yeah. This is sort of a hypothetical question, but do you think the guys who are beer gut, PBR, not that there's anything wrong with PBR, don't get me
I disagree.
wrong.
It's so it's an insult to
Do you
beer.
think that those beer gut softball players wrap their self-worth up in how their team performs in a softball season?
Is this rec league?
I mean,
Yeah.
just
And
the,
are
the
they the
average
MVP?
adult. Most of us are, most of us are rec league climbers.
100%.
Yeah.
So, is there any difference? Why don't those guys wrap their self-worth up in their teams? They just go out and have a good time all the time. They lose every damn night of the season, and they still had a great night.
Because of PBR.
Because of PBR, exactly.
I think because those guys know that they're never going to make it to, they're never going to make it to the level of professionals in what they do. And I'm not saying
Yeah,
we
I
are
don't-
going to do that.
Do we think we're gonna
But no,
be
no.
professionals?
But I think there's the next level for us, and there's we're all pushing a next level. I don't think in those
I see what you're saying.
rec
So-
level sports. I don't think there is really a next level. It's
Right,
just
right,
that's
right,
all you
right.
have.
To them, it's participation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think for us, there's like pushing, and there's like an unknown of like, is this thing I'm trying to attain actually attainable?
Right.
There also isn't a numerical standard a softball player. Like
Yeah,
he's not gonna
yeah.
hit like a V10 ball.
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
So I mean, it's tricky. It's a different sport. Like,
Yeah,
there's a
yeah,
numerical
yeah.
grade you can tie yourself
Yeah.
to, even though everybody likes to say grades don't matter. Like deep down,
Yeah.
everybody cares a little bit about them.
Yeah, but you know, I think the thing that's important is going to the same ball field and playing softball every week with the same fat dudes drinking the same beer sucks compared to going to beautiful places all over the world and going rock climbing with
Yeah.
like-minded people. You know, I think it's
For sure.
so I think that we don't have anything to complain about. So wrapping your self-worth up in this thing that's amazing is okay, as long as you just realize that it's amazing and it's, you know, the grade doesn't matter.
Yeah, I moved hundreds of miles to live where I could be close to rock climbing. Like I love it, and I'll be doing it the rest of my life. And having the balance where I can step away for a month or two at a time means I'll be doing it the rest of my life, instead of getting so frustrated
Yep.
that I'll never do it again and burn my shoes and, you know, throw my crash pad into the Tennessee River.
Did you burn your shoes and throw your crash pad in the Tennessee River?
I came close a couple times, but
I was really hoping you were going to say you did.
I haven't gotten there yet.
I've seen a
And
golfer throw his whole bag of clubs into a lake.
I have relatives who have missed putt, calmly picked up their bag, gone and dropped it in the river, and have never played golf again.
Yeah.
So,
I
but-
was playing with this
I mean, if you're
dude.
gonna go out, like
Yeah. It's
But
just a wreck
calmly
golfer.
drop
Like,
it in the lake and go.
doesn't make any sense to me.
Are
But
there
yeah.
any non-recreational golfers?
I think
there's
like
a couple.
30.
But yeah, I guess making a final point on what I said, like I'm obviously not advocating quitting a sport that I love. I just think, for me, this is one of my personal ways to deal with it.
Yep,
Stepping
totally.
away for a month or two helps me continue doing what I love, and a lot of times I've come back stronger from it.
Yep.
And climbing when it's 98 degrees and 100% humidity in the south sucks a whole lot.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to deal with it. And I think that's probably about the time you and I first reconnected.
Yeah.
You know, you were kind of coming back to climbing and
Yeah.
were looking for new ways to be stoked. So, and I was looking for information on kettlebells. So it was a good union.
It worked out.
Yeah. All right, Nathan.
Yeah. So mine goes against what the last two people said.
Are you practicing talking deeper? 'Cause-
Sounds
just curious. Just curious. Go ahead.
No, it's just natural.
very natural.
Very natural. So mine goes against what the last two people said, and
You contrarian.
I don't think I
Yes.
can ever talk to you again.
that's fair. And it's stay the course. Like, I think more often than not, people actually, I'll just say it's almost all the time. People are like, "I'm stagnating," and then I'll ask them, "Okay, so what's been going on?" It's like, "Oh," and I'll be like, "Oh, so you actually sent like your first 13B and 13C this year, and you know you climbed your first V10," and they're like, "Yeah, but I don't feel like I'm getting better right now." Or normally I do more rock climbs this time of year. It's like, well, yeah, you just climbed, like jumped two letter grades, like you had to put more time in. Of course you didn't do more things. Or just like all these different things, like it's so easy to feel like you're stagnating. And this is one of the big reasons I'm a huge proponent of keeping a journal or hiring a coach. Having something to actually like log and keep yourself accountable, be able to say, oh, like, yes, today I felt like shit. Like I came in, like to me, I felt like this was a bad session. But then you can look back and you're like, oh, 3 weeks ago, this was actually like fantastic compared to what I was doing 3 weeks ago. Like maybe like my perception, like that, like 3 weeks ago, this stuff didn't feel as hard, but like now, like I felt like garbage, but I was actually climbing way harder than I was then. Like it's very easy to feel like we're stagnating. Like, but when it comes down to it, like a lot of times you're not, like, and you just like, sometimes you have to put in the work. Like boo fucking who, you're not getting better every single day. like this is one of my big arguments with campus boarding, because people are like, oh, I put in like 3 sessions and then I'm like not getting better at
I
it.
still can't do 159.
I know, exactly. It's like I can 147 and that's it. It's like, well, you're hitting 1-4 and I just watch your shoulder sublocks hitting 4. Then you like flip your hand, mantle press, do this death lock off, and it's like a train accident for you to actually hit 7. And like, oh, that's your 147. Okay, like, cool. Like,
I feel like we went a bad direction there.
no, but it's, but like, the thing is, like, there are so many ways to look at your progress.
Yeah.
Like, it's so easy to say, oh, I'm stuck. Like, yeah, because I mean, it's so much easier to, yeah, just be like, oh, like, woe is me. Like, things aren't going great. But when it comes down to it, if you take a step back and you actually look at the details, like, yeah, there's always something to be improving on. There's a lot of times you are improving at things. It's just like you're looking at such a tiny window. You're like, oh, well, here's me today versus me a week ago. But where were you a year ago? Where were you 3 months ago even?
Yep.
Like, it's so, yeah. I think for a lot of people, they quit right when things actually start getting tough.
Yep.
And I mean, you know, obviously there's something to be said for just like hitting your head against the wall, like, and just trying to force something to work. But I think there aren't a ton of people who actually can push themselves that far. Like, a lot of people hit that initial slope and they're like, well, I'm slowing down, time to go find something new and fun and shiny.
Yeah, and that's when you need
totally.
to like put your head down and keep trucking. I see people do that all the time.
Yeah.
You know, they're like really good in like, if we're talking about, you know, like outdoor climbing specifically, you know, and they're really good at like getting really close to doing something. And then as soon as it's time to like turn it on mentally and actually start like trying to apply everything they've learned, then they kind of like walk away and they go like, oh man, I need a break. I need to like step away for a little bit. And you're like, no, this is like when what you've just been doing for the last 2 months like matters the most.
Yeah. This is when it gets serious.
Like, I've only seen you do that crux on that route like 1 out of 10 times every time you try it, and you're convinced you're like so close to doing it, and now you're stepping away. It's like, no, you have so much to learn.
Yeah. And I mean, it's like, I think that's fully understandable, because a lot of times this is when you get into that realm of being uncomfortable.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, like, I can one hang just about anything I get on.
Oh, dude, I'm
like,
so good at one hang.
Champion of one hanging routes. But the difference between like one hanging and saying, okay, like, it's game time, it's time for me to like step up and try and red point, there's a huge jump. Like, because I can feel really comfortable like just pulling on and like climbing a crux at the 9th bolt like right off the dog.
Yeah.
But yeah, like actually committing, it's way easier to be like, I'm just gonna get on something else, I'm stagnating or whatever.
Well, and Chris and I actually, I think, had this conversation like a week ago about that specific thing about trying this route. And I've watched, you know, this person climb up to the very top crux multiple times, like in a row, and not come close to like doing the top crux. And I was kind of talking with this person and, you know, asked like, oh, you know, like, where have you done the top crux from? And it's like, just right here,
Like doing overlaps and such.
Yeah. And, you know, and like, this is like a perfect route to do overlaps on. And, you know, and I was talking to Chris about that, and, you know, it's like a very much a ego thing, you know, and a comfort zone thing, you know, and like, what happens if you take lower and you still don't do it? You know, like all of a
throw
sudden,
your shoes is what you do.
yeah, you know what I mean? Like all of a sudden, like you realize, like, wow, I'm not as close as I think I am.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
like I think I'm geographically really close to the top of the wall,
Right.
But like
That's a good saying.
physically, I'm not like, yeah, people ask me how you doing. I'm like, oh, I'm like geographically, I'm like sort of there, but like,
Yeah, and I think that's pushing into that uncomfortable
yeah.
that Nate was talking
Yeah,
about.
I think that's really like an important distinction.
Yeah,
to
and I
make.
don't know that you're disagreeing. I think you're just looking at another side of it.
Yeah.
No, I think
Yeah.
we're very much just looking at
Yeah.
different angles of it. But I mean, on that, yeah, I fully agree. Like, it is so hard. Like, I can tell you from personal experience. Like,
Yep.
there's times where I'm like, oh, there's that slab crux at the top. I've done it off the dog, and I can tell you it feels really hard when I'm linking it from halfway. But like, man, like stuff like that, like it's very intimidating to
Oh, yeah.
go up, fall, and be like, hey, lower me 2 bolts. I want to try and fall again
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
2 bolts lower,
Yeah.
so that I can like tell myself there's no way in hell I'm going to do it from the ground. But
Yeah.
like that's the thing. It's like when you make those bigger risks and you're like, okay, like I'm going to lower it down, do this big overlap. It's when you do those overlaps, you're like, oh man, like I just linked it from below the rest.
Or you
Like,
make like one extra move.
yeah,
Well, you're
You're like,
expanding that
holy
comfort
shit.
zone at
Yeah.
that point.
exactly.
Yeah. You have so much to learn through those like little things you can do. And I think people always focus on like big breakthrough days as like,
Everybody likes to go from the 2 hang to a 1 hang.
yeah.
There's a lot of shades of gray in
If
between.
you're me, that never happens. It's just like one hang.
I think it's interesting. I'm backing up a little bit here, but I think it's interesting that you bring up the journal. I'm definitely a proponent of the journal, but I haven't always been. And I haven't always been because a lot of the people I knew who were keeping journals were not following a specific training plan. And I felt like it was better to just do a training plan, stay the course, put your head down, do it, and see how it ended up, than it was to do something random, write about how it felt.
I think you're talking about a diary.
Oh, you're exactly right. I never made that connection. You're right.
Diaries.
Climbing. Yeah, fuck your diary. But yeah, I just felt like it was better to put your head down, do the work, get it done, and see what happened at the end, than it was to constantly be assessing how you feel. And it goes back to what Blake was saying earlier about self-awareness. That's the important part of this. You can't know if you're stagnating if you have not cultivated that self-awareness that comes from years of training and practice and just
Doing it wrong.
yeah, and doing it wrong, doing it every which way and really spending the time soaking in this to become self-aware. You're going to think you're stagnating anytime you're feeling bad emotionally. I have so many people who are like, I peaked last week. And I'm like, no, you didn't. You're chill out, and then a week later, I peaked this week. I'm like, no, you didn't. And then a week later, I'm plateaued. I need something different, and it's just so easy to get in your own feelings. So I've always preferred the stick to the training plan. Don't worry about how you're feeling. Just do the plan.
Well, yeah, and that goes back to, you got to, like you said, finish the plan, because the whole point of a training plan is to stress the body so it's forced
Right.
to adapt.
Yep.
And yeah, when you stress the body, guess what? You're going to feel like shit a couple days.
Yep.
It's going to happen.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong. I am a fan of keeping a journal and being able to look back on it. But I wasn't connecting the two, I guess.
No, and I did like to kind of agree with you for once. Like I fully agree with what you're saying. Like I think that you should stick with things. I think where I see value is like take notes during the day, but don't let yourself over adjust course. Don't say like, oh, I'm feeling great today, I'm going to ramp up everything for tomorrow, or I'm feeling like garbage, I'm going to make it easier tomorrow. Just, hey, like, this is today, like, this is how I felt. Don't make a judgment over it. Just keep moving on. Like, obviously if there's injuries or whatever, like, or if anything's feeling tweaky, you adjust as necessary, or you discuss, like, if you have a plan with a coach, you talk with whoever you're working with, or like you adjust as necessary. But like, yeah, this is more just like checkpoints. And when you're done, like let's say you're doing, a 3-month program, at the end you say, okay, like how did everything go during? And you'll end up coming across a lot of these really big similarities. Like you'll see these patterns come through. You're like, oh, I really felt like garbage my third week of each, like if it was broken into 3 4-week plans, you're like the third week of each one I felt amazing, but the second one I felt terrible or whatever. And you're like, oh, these weren't just random things, these were just how everything was patterned, this is how I responded. Like, so then you can know in the future, like, hey, when I feel rough on my second week, like that's just how it's going to be. Or when I feel amazing on my third week, like we're not going to start just trying to rip off all the hardest things we can, like just stay the course.
Yep. And like you said in the beginning, it's a good reason to have a coach because we can look at that stuff and talk you off the ledge.
Yeah.
So,
Or on it.
yeah, or onto the ledge, whichever the case may be.
Very interesting coaching style.
Is that me? Am I up?
I believe so.
I believe so. Yeah.
I've changed mine like 3 times throughout the course of this conversation. And I think I want to zero in because of what Blake was talking about a little bit on a specific route or a specific problem. If you're plateaued on that route or that problem, you feel like there's nowhere else to go but send, then I think changing tactics is of huge importance. And I've definitely run into this issue myself where I've been banging my head against the wall on a route, and the minute I changed my tactics a little bit, it made all the difference and I went to the top. It's happened over and over and over again, and I still don't necessarily learn the lesson any faster, I don't think. It still takes me a while to work through that process of, okay, here's where I'm at. Let me change and try something else. And I just think it's huge to be able to, and again, it requires being self-aware, like Blake mentioned before, because you have to know when your tactics have run out. You know, they've run their course. You need to try something new. And yes, it can go into training as well, but specifically a single route, a single boulder, don't discount the tactics. You may not just need to be stronger. You might need new tactics. So,
Do you have any examples of this?
for myself or...
Sure. When you say tactics, are we talking like red point tactics? Or are we talking like shenanigans tactics?
Whatever it may be. Whatever.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not against shenanigans by any means.
So let's go. Let's go.
Should we start with the shenanigans?
Of course. No, so I mean, like, would this be like, okay, I'm going to work on overlaps, or I'm going to try on low points?
I think that's the obvious place to start. You know, like Blake was talking about, if you're falling at the crux up high, it's really easy to get trapped into being geographically close to the top. So you just keep climbing up there and falling off, keep climbing up and falling off. And maybe you're even making incremental little progress, you know, like, oh, I generated some movement off of this rest instead of just falling off the rest, you know. But
So bad.
it happens. It totally happens.
Fell out of the rest.
But if you stop a few bolts in where you would never stop before and then try it from there, you're going to come to some realizations. I think that's the most important part. You may not make big progress, but you're going to start to realize some things.
Well, and it'll speed up your process.
It will, for sure. And that process may end up being, you're not strong enough right now.
Yeah,
and that's
exactly.
totally okay.
Yeah.
you
Or
know?
your beta may not be feasible from
Right.
the ground.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can waste an entire season convincing yourself that you're close to doing something without actually taking the steps to really like find out where you are on the route.
Yeah. It may be that you're not strong enough. It may be that you are strong enough and your beta's wrong. It might, you know, who knows what it is, but you're going to realize some things by changing your tactics up.
I think it's good to kind of play things, kind of play the ball as it lies sometimes as well.
Okay.
Like one thing,
You know,
that,
this Devil's Advocate podcast happens later. Right?
So no, like this is fully going off
It'll
of
be
what
a good one, we can tell.
what y'all are talking about. Like one thing that happens to a lot of people is, let's say your foot slips at the third bolt of like a 14 bolt route. You're like, fuck it, lower me. Like immediately, like,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Instead, just stay there.
yeah. And like, let's say the crux is even till way higher, or it's a power endurance route, and so like you shouldn't have fallen there. Like that, like use that as an opportunity to be like, okay, cool. Like I would never try and link anything from the third bolt because there's no point in ever being here.
Right.
So then like pause and be like, cool, I'm going to try and link from here.
Yep,
And what
totally.
what starts as, and this has happened to me multiple times, and it's always been an accident. And like I can tell you immediately, the second I hit the rope, I'm like, dirt me. And thankfully, I've always had very patient belayers who are like, are you sure? I'm like, of course I'm not sure. I'm pulling up right now. But they've always been accidents, and like I'm always just like okay, I guess I'm just gonna climb from here, like the third bolt. I don't even know I'm here, and then they turn into this monstrous link, and I'm like, oh, like this can happen. And like those always end up being these crazy breakthrough moments. But it's a lot of times like, yeah, what starts as just like a shit show or like some accident or something like that could easily be discouraging can turn into something awesome. So yeah, like as far as tactics go, you know, sometimes something slips in by accident, but really just take everything like as it comes.
Yeah. I think, you know, for boulders, it might be harder to have it be an accident.
You don't really stop at the third bolt very often.
Yeah, you stop the third bolt on most boulders.
And I found the harder boulders get, the harder it is to pull on. Like
Yeah, midway.
2 or 3 moves in,
true.
like
Yep.
it changes the problem completely.
You know, and, you know, Paul and I have both been working on Golden Harvest a little, and Paul's been working on it a little. I've been working on it a lot. And
I've been working on it a lot too. It's cool.
and the funny thing about that boulder is the hardest move is move 3.
Yeah.
So once you've dialed in move 1 and 2, they're not horribly bad. But hand move number 3, because I see you over there miming it, Nate, trying
to remember.
trying to be a contrarian.
Well, actually,
Hand move number 3 is really hard. And a lot of people just refuse to start anywhere but the start every single time. Even though it's a V10 boulder, a relatively hard V10 boulder, you would think that at that point people know that it's helpful to save some energy, get a power spot into the move or whatever to start working out that micro beta that's going to allow that move to work. Everyone just resists that.
well,
And-
the day I was out there with
Because you know it's only 2 moves.
yeah,
Right.
It's only 2 moves.
yeah.
All I gotta do is stick that move and I'm going to the top.
Yeah, and the
You
day
know?
I was out there with you, there were, you know, like whatever, like 25 people
Right.
at the
Par for the
boulder,
course.
and it was just like a ton of people like trying it, and everyone was like not doing the move, and every time you got on, pretty much you had and at least like power spot you wanted to like try.
Yeah,
out one
I'm
move,
not
and you
trying to
were-
waste the
and you
energy on the
were-
moves I can already do.
You were closer than anyone else to like doing that boulder,
Right.
So like clearly it works.
Yeah, I think it's big to be
Yeah.
able to let your ego down in front of a crowd and change your tactics up a little
Yeah.
bit and, you know, try to save some energy
Yeah.
and learn some things. So,
Have bring everyone in on this. Have y'all found or refound any great tactics this year for red pointing? Like, I'll give an example to start things off. I was belaying a buddy on Transworld, and I don't know, it's maybe like the 7th bolt or something. You get to a flat edge, and you have to like make kind of a difficult clip. Thank you, Chris Hampton, for moving that bolt. And it's like it's a fairly
that
difficult.
bolt wasn't hard for me to clip, just so you know.
So it's like a fairly difficult clip, and you kind of want to be able to be relaxed on this hold, and it's not a great hold. This was a tip I had gotten years ago and kind of forgotten about it until I was belaying a buddy, and he was just like, "Man, I don't feel comfortable there." And I was like, "Well, go up, like, and just sit and shake out on that hold until you literally fall off of it. Like, sit and just try and like shake, try and relax." And I mean, what's funny is when he would get there on point, he would get there and he'd only have like maybe like 15 seconds. Elbows would be above his wrists, and he would just be like bricked and falling off. And then when he got instead, he was like, "Okay, I'm just going to pull on and try and hang out." He sat there for like 2 minutes, was able to like really find how he wanted to be there. And he ended up sitting it like a week later, and he was just like, "Man, like I finally was comfortable." And it wasn't like, and it's funny because you think about it, it's like, well, yeah, it's like this is a very strenuous position, so try and make it easier. But it's so hard for us to take that step back and be like, no, I just need to like go through and figure it out.
I'm
like,
literally doing that
Yeah.
tomorrow.
yeah, no, like I had a friend recommend it to me
Yeah.
years ago on a
Yeah.
rest because I was just like, these holds, I cannot rest on and recover on these holds.
Yeah.
And she was just like, well, go up like and just sit and try and shake out on them until you literally fall off of the wall. And I was like, that sounds awful. Okay, I'll go for it.
Yeah.
And then, like-
I'm gonna do it tomorrow.
Yeah, and what was like this horrible rest hold, like suddenly when I was like, okay, I'm just gonna stay here until I fall with no like judgment of am I recovering or whatever. Suddenly I was on it for like 5 full minutes, and then I was like, okay, I'm like completely gassed. Every time after that, I was comfortable because I was like, okay, if I can sit here for 5 minutes, I can surely sit for 30 seconds of like
Yeah.
shaking out and then get to the next good rest.
Yeah. That's really cool.
Good tactic.
So for me, that was like, that's something that worked really well in the past, and it was kind of fun to remember it this year and have it work for someone else.
Yeah, that's really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, for me, the tactic that I kind of rekindled this year that I had been through in the past, but had not necessarily abandoned, but I just hadn't needed it because I hadn't really been working on super bouldery off the ground routes for quite some time, is that it works really nice for me to either pull through the initial boulder problem and do the other moves, maybe even do the boulder problem once in isolation and then just rest for a few minutes. Like not wait until, not belay someone else, none of that. Just wait 5 minutes, sit there under the route, and then tie back in and go. And I feel much more ready at that point than I do if I warm up on a few routes and then just wait until my turn again.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'm a huge fan of that. Like, I mean, especially with really bouldery routes, something like right off the ground. Like, yeah, man, you take a 30-minute rest. It's hard to like flip the switch and go right back on.
Yep, totally.
Yeah. I have one. It's a little more of like a mental kind of tactic that I've been using, and I think kind of Arno talks about it in the podcast with you. I kind of always thought of it as like a test, learn, retest kind of scenario on a route. And
Dude, that strategy applies so much to so many things.
yeah, it's like climb on a route. You think you've gotten all the information about the route, or as Bill Ramsey likes to say, you've interrogated the route.
Yeah,
It's revealed the secrets to you.
Yeah, I like that.
Which is like a great way to think about projecting. And then you test, and if you do the route, then you've learned everything you need to learn.
Right.
And if you don't do the route, then you go back and you try and learn again, and then you retest, and you kind of keep that cycle. And for me, that's like really helps me mentally, like when I don't do a route. And I think it kind of keeps for me momentum on a route that's like really hard physically and mentally, just to like always think about that as like, all right, I'm testing what I currently know. I can't know any more than I know right now. And if I don't, when I don't do the route, I'm going to try my damnedest to like get to the top. And if I don't, then I'm going to try and like,
right. There's more for you to learn.
I'm going to learn something new this go, even if it's just like, I don't need to hang out on this hold as long, or I need to not be scared, and like the steps I need to take to like rectify those, and then like retest.
Yeah, and it's not like this test is, multiple choice where you've tried it 3 times, the 4th time you're going to get it. I mean, there's only one choice left. It's more like this open-ended essay
Infinite
question where you just have to know the answer.
Yeah. And that helps me a lot with like my process with like climbing on hard routes.
Yeah.
I really like that a lot, because that also takes off the pressure of like, oh, am I not good enough, or am I not strong enough? Like all these things, it's like, I just don't understand yet.
Yeah.
How do I just need to really be patient. I need to learn how to understand this. I need to figure it out. Because I mean, I'm a huge believer, and I think most of us are proponents of the idea that we should always be training to get stronger. Like that is a constant. It's not like, oh, well, I can't do this, I need to get stronger for this specifically. It's like strength is a constant. So everything else, like if you already know that that's going to be a constant, then like when you're working on a project, I love the idea of saying like, okay, what can I learn more? Like how can I be better for this? How can I elevate myself? If strength is already being taken care of, like how can I climb better and be more intelligent about my process?
Then you learn that little thing, and the next go you test it.
Yeah, and if you're in that constant learning process, it's not a knock on you. It's not a negative if you don't have the requisite skills at the moment. You're still in the process, so you just go back and you come back when you have those requisite skills. It's the way life works. So it's not saying that you're a shitty rock climber. You're just not quite there yet, and you will be soon.
Yeah, and we kind of like, me and a few of my friends always kind of say, like you have to put in the requisite goes to do a route. You can't just like not go climb out. Like some of my days are literally just spent being more comfortable on something.
Absolutely.
And I think
Yeah.
like those are days where
And that's a tactical way to look
that
at
was
it.
really successful. You know, I'm like, oh, today I felt more comfortable. I wasn't like nervous down here at the bottom, you know, where I might like hit the ground if I blow this move or, you know, whatever. And I think like I think oftentimes we kind of overlook needing to just put in work and just like punch the clock. Like those are the days to me that matter the most.
Yep.
Are the days where you just like grind it out. And you just like go out and you do it and you make it happen and you go home and like those are the largest chunk of my climbing days.
You don't get to go home if you don't make it happen.
Yeah.
That's
Are you talking about free soloing?
Yeah, I'm just talking about everything. You don't succeed, you don't go home. Period. No.
Yeah.
I think. Are you up? Are you finishing?
Oh man, I feel like I just talked forever.
You gotta talk some more.
Yeah. Okay, so
That's what we do here is talk.
Second one is kind of like really similar to what we were just talking about, but I'll put like a name to it, which is identifying and breaking patterns.
Mm-hmm.
I think we all have patterns that we tend to fall into, and to use personal experience, I actually talked to Nate about this, ran into him the other day, and we were talking in Whole Foods, and one of my buddies, James Pullum, forever.
Wait, climbers were in Whole Foods?
Climbers were in Whole Foods.
That
We were
never
there.
happens.
I think I was drinking chocolate milk coffee.
I think you were.
It was a good day.
But yeah, we were standing there, and my buddy James was trying to convince us all to go bouldering, and the idea sounded really fun to me, but I realized, and I talked to Nate about this, that I'd spent a few seasons here in Chattanooga because it's really easy to get distracted and kind of like spread yourself thin, that I started calling it the like flavor of the month mentality, where I'd spend a month trying something and I would move on to something else, and I wouldn't realize I was doing it, but I would be convincing myself that I was trying really hard.
Are you talking about how like a bunch of people get stoked on like a certain route?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like I would do that, and then I'd be really excited, and then I would then go try something else, and then I would go there, and I go there for a month, and then I would just like keep doing that, and come the end of the season, I hadn't really done anything, and so I kind of like had to really like catch myself in this pattern I would go through, and I started doing it this season too. I'd actually like been trying this one route that was like a goal of mine. I'd like talked to Chris about it like way early in the year, and it was like something I really want to do. And then I found myself like 4 climbing days in a row or something trying something else. I had hung draws on it. And then one day I went out there and I was like, what am I doing? What am I doing? And I like pulled through like half the moves, like just like grabbing draws and just like skipping moves, and like climbed to the top, and I cleaned them, and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I'm going to waste an entire season just, like, trying this thing and not this route that I've been, like, training all summer to, like,
Good you realize that,
try and
though.
do. But I think, like, that's a pattern that I realize that I do. Which
Well,
is,
I think it's easy to, like, especially when you're trying something hard like you are, something hard for you.
Yeah.
It's really easy to do that as a form of avoiding failure.
Yeah, exactly. And just, like, not wanting to, like...
Like, oh, of course I didn't do it. I didn't try it all that many times.
Yeah,
You
and
know?
like it's like oftentimes I really like climbing new stuff. Like new stuff is really fun.
Yeah.
Trying new hard routes. Like I love like getting on new hard things for the first like couple days where you're just like learning and there's no pressure. And you're just like
breakthrough.
yeah, every day's a breakthrough. But then you know, what are you left with? You just like, you know, I could have gone bouldering and done those boulder problems, you know, and just done a bunch of new boulders, but instead I've not done anything. So,
Yeah, and if you stick to the route that is your main goal, and you do fail on it, at least you know why you're failing.
Yeah.
You know, it's not, you're still guessing if you didn't really put that much effort into it.
Yeah.
So you're going to end up doing the same thing the next season when you know you're not prepared again.
Yeah, and I think, you know, like you can take like kind of identifying patterns and like, you know, get more specific. We kind of talked about it with like routes and our boulders and just kind of the way you approach your mentality about like trying to do something, you know, starting from the ground every time when you can like get a power spot and actually figure out how to do the move, or convincing yourself you're close to doing the route when you're like not close to doing it. And
Yeah.
I think you can like protect your ego in a lot of different ways. And I think
That's what we do. That's what we
Yeah,
live for.
yeah.
We're trying to protect our egos. It's just a natural reaction.
yeah. And so for me, that's something I've been like working really hard to do, which is like identifying my patterns that I like go into when things get hard.
Yep. Do you see other people out at the boulders or out at the crags who don't seem to be protecting their ego? Like, do you?
Yeah, I do.
you
And that was
notice
like
that?
kind of like another one of my things that I made a big list because I kept thinking of stuff was like analyzing other people.
Yeah.
So analyzing people that are really successful at what they do, and then analyzing people that never do anything, and like what do they do? Like how do they like? Why are they not successful? Why do they send everything that they
Yeah.
want to do? And kind of like taking bits and pieces from everyone. Because I mean, really, like, most of the stuff that I'm like talking about, it's like personal experience, or I've like witnessed it. So kind of like,
Yeah. Yeah, there are definitely times when I see other people out at the crag or whatever who are sort of doing the exact opposite of what I do to protect my ego, and knowing that I do it, but I can't really break myself out of it until I see that other person. Then I'm like, oh yeah, you're being an idiot.
oh yeah,
You
I've
know?
learned so
Like
much.
just the other day on Golden Harvest, watching our friend Johnny Lightning on it, he tried every ridiculous piece of beta that he could
I was
think
out
of.
there. I was like, what are you doing?
Yeah, like, but he's this long dude,
Yeah.
so he's like, and he told me, I feel like I should try something ridiculous every other attempt, just to see what's going to work. And I was like, yeah, I'm not trying ridiculous things. Like I'm just trying to stick to the beta, and I almost found myself like there's a way to make that third move look like you're close, even when you're really not. And I almost found myself wanting to go to that.
Because you could get into it.
I can
in a
get
way,
into it,
you
but then I
couldn't
can't
out of
move.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. But it looks better. You're like,
Yeah.
oh, you're in it. You're close. But you're really not.
It's like
you're
the
further away.
Boulder's version of geographically close.
close.
That's
Exactly.
the Boulder one hang right there.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I
Boulder
found
one
my brain going to that, like, maybe I should try that again. And I'm like, no, you're being an idiot, Do what Johnny's doing. Just, even
Try
if
shit.
it looks stupid for a minute,
Yeah.
try it. Because that's what's going to get it done.
I think it's good too, like, to be able to eliminate everything else sometimes.
Absolutely. And
then
that's what
there's-
he said. That's
Yeah.
exactly what he said. Like, I have to at least eliminate these things.
Yeah, because then there's no hesitation of like, oh, well, what if I try that tail hook? Or what if I try that other hand hold? Or like grab this hold slightly differently? Like, if you eliminate it all, you're like, well, here it is. Okay.
Well, might as well do it early
Yeah.
than spend a month.
And
or
sometimes you
two.
surprise yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Man,
Yeah.
I've had so many times where I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna try this shenanigans, and it works. I'm like, I never would have even
And
like.
you're like, oh, rock climbing is shenanigans.
Yeah. Oh. It's still just bouldering. Okay. Yeah. This is how this works. But yeah, like, there's so many times where I feel like that it's very necessary. Of like, I don't think this is gonna work, but by at least trying it, I'll get it out of my head. And so when I am trying the actual sequence that I'm sure is going to work, like, I can just 100% focus and just try hard and execute that movement instead of asking the what ifs.
Yep, totally. You don't want to have to ask the what ifs later. I think that about wraps it up. Is that everybody? We got it. You can find all of us at powercompanyclimbing.com. You can find Paul at cruxconditioning.com. Is that correct? Definitely check out his blog and the Bullet Points and Brews. You're going to dig it for sure. You can find us all on all the social medias. We're out there. We're everywhere. Except for the Twitters. We don't tweet. We scream like eagles.
This time, this time, this time, this time, this time to build, this time to build, this time to build, this time, this time to build, this time to build, this time to build, this time, power, this time to build, power, this time to build, power, this time to build, power. This time to build. It's 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 time to build.